Duality Way podcast, where we discuss all things health and wellness related from a professional perspective, understanding the dualistic nature of life.
This week we'll be discussing fuel for focus, how nutrition impacts your productivity. When it comes to how nutrition impacts your productivity, this is a topic that I love because food is your fuel. If you like it or not, if we don't eat enough or we eat a lot of the wrong stuff, your body is not going to process it well enough to create enough energy for your brain to focus. And the reality is your brain has to function for you to breathe, for you to see anything. Some people who, for instance, starve themselves by accident and the wrong purpose, they see spots, for instance, right? It's your nervous system's reaction to not having enough energy in your brain. The same way as, for instance, as much as nutrition technically is only food, hydration is also important when it comes to that. Because if you're not in the, I wouldn't say perfect, but in a good enough state, and your body doesn't have good enough energy, your brain is not going to focus on a task that is not survival. That is why you get some people who can literally only think about food, right? Because your brain is literally going, every time you're doing a task, it's like, hey, next step needs to be food. Hey, food. No? It's like that little gremlin in the back of your brain. And the same way as some people who have anxiety see, tasks as stressful, your body sees not eating or eating the wrong stuff as a threat. And so eating the wrong stuff, not always, because it does also spark a different part of the brain where we have endorphins that come from eating nice things. And if you have a tendency to enjoy sugar, for instance, it's not always going to be the best for you, because for instance, what will happen is your blood sugar will go really, really high, but then drop massively. That's why we've got GI, which is glycemic index. So low GI can be a way for you to give yourself nutrition that will last throughout the day. And part of that is because it's mostly got more fiber, which is then more difficult to process, which then means that your body absorbs the glucose slower, and it really helps. This is going to be a really technical podcast.
So I think what is most relevant to me for this topic is that, similarly to, in one of our previous topics, we spoke about food and mood. And this relates very much so, just on a different nuance level, because we're talking specifically about productivity. But your mood also affects your productivity, and something that's recently come out in studies is that your gut is responsible for producing 80% of your serotonin. Which is obviously your mood regulating hormone. And that is massive. I'm sure you've noticed that if you have a stomach bug or whatever, you get brain fog. You can't think straight, you can't focus on anything or whatever, especially if you're someone like myself who has ADHD. Having stomach issues at the same time is a nightmare. Like you just cannot focus on anything. And for me, what's very important for me is that I've got to eat right. I cannot have too much dairy because I'm partly lactose intolerant. Not too much, but I know that if I have too much dairy, it starts to affect me, because if it affects my gut, it affects my brain, and then I can't focus properly. So for me, what's relevant to this topic is that if I'm making sure that I'm eating to be productive, I'm making sure that I'm making sure I'm eating less dairy, less oil, so that it's not too hard on my system, because I know if my stomach goes out, then I can barely get anything done. So yeah, that's how that works for me.
And like Carl mentioned, for a lot of people, it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
So the one thing that is constant, for instance, is blood sugar. If you've got bad blood sugar that is low or high, you're not going to be able to focus, because your brain is legitimately just trying to find the best way to equalize and come back to equilibrium. And like we mentioned in the previous podcast, it can be very important to make sure that your status quo, or the equilibrium point, is at a healthy space. And the reason for that is your optimal nutrition is where your optimal productivity lies. Because when your body functions well, your brain doesn't have to focus on, ooh, there's a pain there, ooh, there's my stomach hurts, ooh, my kidney hurts, ooh, I'm worried about going to the doctor because I know I'm diabetic and I just had a chocolate bar. Or, it's a very distracting thing when your body is not in the right space, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because it can either be discomfort or just stress in general, or it can even just come down to some people just feel bad. I know for myself, when I used to drink, for instance, the next day I would always say, I don't get hangovers, but I had to have a drink before 8 o'clock in the morning because otherwise I'd have a headache the whole day.
Yeah.
Imagine. But no hangovers. No. But some people get food hangovers where, you've eaten the wrong thing. I know you've mentioned this before. If you have something that's got a lot of fat, like a steak or something, the next day you feel terrible.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And there are some people who I was actually feel the same way when I eat certain vegetables. I can't tell you any. Pickles. Funny enough, I can have cucumbers but not pickles. If I have pickles, my body feels terrible the next day. I have feelings about the salt content, but I'm not sure. And it's also the texture, slightly. It's not for me. And so it's a very interesting thing where and that's one of the things that's the most frustrating thing about wellness. No one has the same answer.
Yeah.
You've got to find what works not only for you but for your body. So can you fit it into your habits? Is it something you're going to enjoy? Because that's another thing that comes down to productivity. Sometimes people take a diet and they sit there and they're trying to eat as healthy as possible and they're trying to make sure that they're doing all the right stuff, but it taxes them mentally and it makes them feel terrible.
So it's not sustainable.
They're either anxious or disappointed because they've had a chocolate bar and they're not supposed to, or because, and the reality is your body craves what it needs. So sometimes, yes, you're craving a chocolate bar, but you actually just need energy. And the reason your body's craving that is because it's a source, and a quick source, of energy. And so your body is going to crave something, but it's also up to you to try and figure out what that craving can be. So trying to understand, okay, am I craving this because I don't have energy? Maybe I should have a banana instead because it's also a fiber and it's easier to digest. Maybe I should go and have a sandwich if I've got a sandwich for lunch. Another thing that can be challenging, the environment that you're in. I'm currently coaching a woman. She has had such an amazing journey. She's already lost 24 kilograms. She's struggling to lose the rest of the body weight because she's in a space where she's permanently stressed. She now doesn't eat breakfast, doesn't eat lunch. She only eats at night. So with that comes starvation, obviously. I promise you now she's not focused and then she's binging. But then because she's binging, she's not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Because she's not sleeping while she's having too much coffee. If she's having too much coffee, she's not eating, she's not hungry.
Jeez.
And so everything plays a factor. And so what we've implemented with her is she has to pack a lunch the night before. Now that she's done that, she's no longer starving in the day. She's fine. She's good to go.
Yeah.
When she comes home, she doesn't have to have a portion. She can have a normal sized portion.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to control things when you have it in smaller doses. For myself, I don't eat breakfast because I actually become lethargic and I don't stop eating.
Interesting.
Because for me, my hunger receptors, because I have been an addict, I don't stop. I will consistently keep doing the thing. And so if I have breakfast, I'm snacking the whole day. And then I'm not sleeping well because I've had too much to eat. My stomach feels full, I feel uncomfortable. And I'm not focused because I'm tired. My body is trying to digest the food I'm having.
Interesting. I think this is it's quite an interesting thing because it just kind of highlights exactly how personal the journey is, because I have the opposite. I wake up hungry. I need to eat. If I don't eat in the morning, I'm going to be super cranky. And especially if I miss breakfast and I hit that point where I stop being hungry, I'm going to be useless for the rest of the day because I don't have enough energy from when I wake up.
I know, I remember from the conference.
Yeah, when we were at the conference, I couldn't understand why you didn't have breakfast in the house, and I was like, nah, I need my breakfast.
Yeah, it was very strange because as a company, we were covering lunch and dinner, and I hadn't considered breakfast as an option. And then when we got there, Carl and the manager, we were both saying, I need breakfast. And I was like, why? What's your issue? And so it's funny because not only that, but it's also the factor of, you've got to follow your journey. If you're trying to follow someone else's journey.
Yeah, I think it's very important to highlight that, and we need to actually underline that particular point about how personal the journey of nutrition actually is. Everybody's gut biome is very different. So what a certain food is going to do to me is going to be something completely different. You mentioned how you noticed how when I have very fatty meats, I'm non-functional. Like I can't actually have red meat more than maybe twice a week, because I know that if I do that, my brain just doesn't function. My gut feels terrible. Like it's just it doesn't work for me. And this is why I don't like the idea of people being almost religious about certain diets, like the carnivorous diet and the Banting diet and the keto diet and then this diet. It doesn't make any sense to me because everybody's body reacts very differently to different food. There is no holy grail of diet. For instance, I have a client of mine who likes to go on 5-day fasts where he doesn't eat anything for 5 days. He lives on black coffee and water. He obviously has now started to adapt that, where he will have like a bone broth or something like that. And he does now sometimes break his fasts when he is on fast. But he still does these long-term fasting periods. And I said to him, bro, I don't know how you do that. I would absolutely waste away. But he's a big guy, and he's got a lot of reserve. Not to say that he's incredibly overweight. He's not. He's actually he's got a lot of muscle mass. But he's a guy who likes to eat, so he does have a little bit of fluff.
That's all we have time for. Thank you for joining us. On the next podcast, we'll be discussing
Meal prep for your workforce. Teams that eat well are teams that thrive.